My name is Constance and I'm a visual artist among other things, and I concentrate on line cut. I was very lucky because the primary school I went to, we did art. My father actually was the principal of the school and he loved to draw himself. So every second Friday we would have art class in the afternoon. We sang one Friday afternoon and the following Friday afternoon we would have art. So I was drawing from an awfully early age. In secondary school then we had the most amazing teacher called Sister Edmund in the Louis Convent, and she would let you work there all day. I mean, there were times I didn't really want to go to sport or something, and she'd let you sit there and mitch and do your drawing or your linos, and she loved lino, and it was from her that I really started doing the linos. I think Patrick Kavanagh said, "I dabbled in verse and became my life," and I just think that might answer it very broadly. I think that an engagement with art it gets people thinking about themselves and what they might want to do and might not want to do. They may not end up as artists, but I think it makes you contemplative and it makes you sort of explore ideas and to think about things. So that's why it's a good idea. I mean, when I worked with children, I'd say I'm not going to produce a whole pile of Picassos here or anything like that. I mean, the engagement with the materials and all of that kind of thing is enough. And sometimes children emerge like yourself who will become serious artists. Many don't. But I think the creative experience gets them thinking in a particular way. I think if you really love to do it, just keep doing it every day. When I did printmaking, I continued with the printmaking because I was married very young and I could do it at the kitchen table. That's why printmaking became really what I did, even though I have done other things as well. I've painted murals and all sorts of things. But the constant through my life was printmaking, and essentially it was because I could do it at the kitchen table. But you asked me about my influences. I suppose German Expressionism, Kathy Kollwitz and people like that. They would, and I think artists who are actually saying something in the work. I'm not interested in art that's decorative. To me, that's just interior decoration. I mean, I know that's an awful thing to say, but art for me has to say something. It doesn't have to be explicit, but even in the materials you use, it has to be making some sort of statement. You showed an interest in this particular one. I'm an associate member of a number of groups because in Dundalk, I mean, I lived in Dublin for many years, and then when I moved to Dundalk, there were really no groups that were doing anything like the work I was doing. So I remained associated with the graphic studio and in Dublin and Leinster Printmakers and various people who I'd worked with in the past. So I am still with Leinster Printmakers, though they're now based in Clane. But and they had an exhibition, a 1916 exhibition. Printmaking exhibition, but in different print genre, and they had it in the Little Museum. It started off in the Little Museum there in Stephen's Green, and it was sponsored by both the Dublin City Libraries and Kildare and County Council and the library system, and it went to every single library all over the place in those two counties. So anyway, but so it's been around. So I decided to do we had to do it specifically about Easter week. So I was very interested in the surrender because it emerged that everybody said, Pierce surrendered at the time, but it's only emerged that actually a woman was with him, and she went out first actually with the flag and so on, sent by him and all of the rest of it. And in fact, I was going to get the original photograph off the computer. We must get that because I wanted to have it side by side with the other one, because that is more or less the photograph. I based it on the photograph, but without her. And so it's the whole thing of women being invisible, which is very prevalent at the moment. And so that's why I did that. And put Elizabeth Farrell's name, put Elizabeth Farrell back in the picture. So you're asking me about the process. That's the lino. I generally get them. It's a particular kind of lino. It's actually called ship's lino. They put it on ship's floors. It's not especially for this. But I like to use the old-fashioned hard lino. People are using softer lino now, but I would prefer to still use the old stuff because you can get a sharper cut in it. And I get it mounted on plywood. I buy it by the roll and get it, and then I actually can cut it myself in pieces. So these are the carving tools, which are Japanese, which I actually bought in New York, but I think you can buy them anywhere. And I've had them about 20 years now. And you just cut out your design. You do a drawing obviously first, and then you trace it onto the lino. Or if you're doing a very freehand piece, you can actually draw directly onto the lino, and then you roll ink. I actually use a sheet of glass. You roll ink on the glass with this roller, or if you want a small roller or whatever, roll it onto the block, and then put a piece of paper on top, and then with a dry roller, roll it on top, and you have your print. Well, if you notice from this, it's reverse. You have to draw, and this has to be in reverse to come out positive. I don't know if you can see those things. Can you see the difference? Or, again. So that's the gist of it. And then you can print as many as you want. I generally do about 20. Yeah. But curtailed use costs, paper costs and everything is all terribly expensive, because I like to, if I can, to work on handmade papers. But you have to get in London now, it's possible to get them. I like to use the rice paper, which is quite thin, and so it's hard to get. Well, I have to tell you that I'm a socialist, and without apology. I think the world should belong to everybody, not just the few and not just the rich. And so therefore, that means that I think that art should be accessible to everybody. And there was a whole thinking about dumbing down art, and I mean, I just think that's an insult to the whole concept of art and to the artist, and there really is. I think for art to be, in order to be available, so in my opinion, in order for art to be available, you sell it cheaply. For instance, theatres are far too expensive to go to. When I think I mentioned to you before that I visited the Soviet Union, and I couldn't believe how cheap it was to get into the opera and the circus and all of that, and people in overalls coming from work, and to me this is the ideal. And so accessibility is, I mean, if it was affordable, it can be accessible. I think more people would engage with it. It's very difficult now for artists to work without having money behind them. You know what I mean? In our day, you made it, you found a place to put it up, and you weren't too worried about prestige or any of those kind of things. And you eventually maybe got a gallery and so on afterwards. But now it's a bit like people usually have to jump in at the deep end straight away, or they're not successful. Or they think they're not successful, and I think it is an awful lot more difficult for younger artists to break through. As well as that, I was just talking to somebody recently about this, and younger friends that you had at the time who went to college and maybe who became solicitors or whatever, and they had a first salary, the first thing to do would be buy a piece of artwork. It's amazing the number of people who would tell me, yes, oh, I bought my first piece from you, and so on, and not just from me, but other fellows like me. And but now they don't do that. Young people, would buy a new carpet or a new Jeep or go to Budapest for the weekend or whatever they do. They don't tend to buy artwork the way my generation certainly couldn't wait to earn some money to buy artwork. And they still have the house full of it. In fact, I was in the house of a woman here in Blackrock the other day, a woman in her 80s, and she was saying, I couldn't stop buying. I always tried to, but that kind of buying it doesn't exist now to the same extent. And you're relying on, we wouldn't have been able to do all those things that our Kildare County Council and Dublin City Council paid for the framing and all of that kind of thing. It's very difficult to put it on an exhibition now. Another thing is, in the past, framer would actually allow you to have the work framed and then pay you afterwards. That not many of them will do that nowadays. So it's harder for people to get going. I think it was when I had the exhibition in Project in 2003, the whole 9 yards, and because it was very difficult for women of my age and at the time to be sure. I mean, even though I'm a founder member of Project, they didn't exhibit the women's work. It wasn't until that was in Project opened in 1967. It wasn't until 75 that I exhibited in Project. I got on a women's exhibition. So there was a lot of discrimination, and we didn't even actually know. I mean, because we weren't even aware of it. You know, it was just that you just weren't included. And I had small children and everything else. So I mean, because I always try to combine making a piece of artwork with doing children's art class and children's projects, I didn't expect to have exhibitions, you know, at the other end of my life, if you like, get back into the gallery situation until I was invited by Project. Grant Watson, who was the visual arts officer or director, what they call him, at the time, saw a piece of a text piece that I had done and liked it and asked somebody about it and contacted me and came down here, and I had been doing my artwork for the whole 9 yards, my opinions and everything, and the reason I call it, you know, that's the American, it's a football expression in America, in the whole 9 yards, and it literally was 9 yards. I did 81 pieces and each was 12 inches square, so I don't know if you can think in terms of feet and inches as distinct from meters, but 9 pieces of lino cut of 12 inches square made 1 yard. So I made 9 9s 81, and I didn't know what, I was just doing them here in the house. I didn't know what was going to happen to them, because I always continued working, but even when I was doing the classes, as you know, I was always doing a little bit of my own work, but really didn't have an outlet anymore. And he came down to visit me, and he couldn't believe I had so many of them, and he said, you know what we'll do, we'll pin them up like on a billboard. And it was a collaboration I never expected with a curator, because I have always been kind of a very independent artist. I was scathing of curators. I thought, you know, they're just another layer, you know, our administrators, another layer, you know, eating up money that should go into the pockets of the artist. But I had a lovely collaboration with him, and we used the very thin paper, and which I like to use, and we pinned them up to this. We made a board of soft board, and we're able to pin them up with just a little bit, and they floated. When somebody opened the door in Project, they floated. And it was lovely, and yet then it was lovely, delicate look about it. And then when you went up and you saw the stuff, the people said, "Oh Jesus," you know what I mean? Like, there were some of them quite strong political views. So I liked that idea of like a wolf in sheep's clothing kind of thing. So that was probably something that I wasn't expecting, and it was absolutely magical. And he wrote an essay on me which nearly has me in tears. It was just lovely, you know what I mean? So, and it was like, because it's nice to have recognition, you know what I mean? And most artists, look, it's very mixed, the reaction people have to you, so you have to be fairly confident about just doing it yourself. But every now and again, a little moment like that happens, and which was great. So that's it. Well, I've had a lot of ill health over the last 4 or 5 years. I've had 2 titanium knees in the last couple of years. So I really wasn't doing a lot of work, apart from the lovely connection I have with the Leinster printmakers. I have been doing a lot of work with them. But I have just found a lovely gallery in Dublin that's doing very innovative conceptual work. I like to do work that's conceptual, but using traditional materials, if you know what I mean, because I think as far as concept is concerned, how you make it, why you make it in the way you do, it should be as important as everything else, not just the idea, if that makes any sense. So I am planning something with them, but I can't really talk about it yet because we haven't really worked it out, but I'm hoping that maybe in the next year I will have something substantial to say